Hi everybody and welcome. Today we're going to be talking about all those nonverbal cues you can read from people. So I am by trade a magazine editor and content creator. I've also done a lot of broadcasting and MC at events and have worked in event production a little as well. So it's led me to found the Speak Up Club, which was originally for empowering women in business in particular and helping them with confidence and public speaking training. I hope after this session what you will gain from it is some psychological insight into how you can read other people, a physical awareness of your own body and maybe the signals that you mightn't realize that you're putting out there. And with that, then maybe a little bit more increased confidence when you're speaking in public or in a meeting or even on Zoom, as most of our meetings are these days. So a little game, first of all, to see how you are reading body signals. There's 3 lines here on these images, and we'll call them like line A, line B, and line C. And so if you look at those, I'd like you to see if you can just tell what the signals are that these people are giving out. You might want to jot them down, or if anybody would like to put them into the chat, that would be great. See if you get them right. So maybe we'll call them A, B, and C going down, and then you can number the people across 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or maybe 6 is the most on a line. Just to tell you, number 1 and 4 on line A don't have a key or a name for what their signal is. So just the other ones, if anyone wants to pop anything into chat there, if you can see what they're saying. And I think this will give you an idea of how much you can pick up just from someone's body without a word being said. And on the next slide, then I'll reveal what the body signals are saying. If you look at them, then you'll see just by a hand signal or the way someone's head is inclined, you can tell a lot without them saying anything at all. The way we use our bodies in this way can tell so much more than just those kind of universally understood signals like hello or welcome, things like that. One of the first ones you might actually notice with people when they're speaking in public is that welcoming gesture. A lot of people will open their hands. You can't really see it on Zoom now, but they'll do an open-handed gesture to welcome people at the start of a speech. And that's something that we kind of automatically do, but certainly people will have been trained to do as well. And if you look at politicians as they start to speak, or someone even welcome you to an event, next time you get to go to an event, God knows when that will be, they'll often welcome you with their hands open like this. And that's a very approachable gesture, but we can also use our bodies to convey power as well. So on this slide, on the left-hand side, I've kind of gone down through the 3 levels. So there are high status behaviors, which are really showing power and authority. Then you've got your warmth and openness kind of level, which is where you're trying to be neutral, confident, welcoming. Then on the lower level, you can maybe sometimes want to appear vulnerable, but at other times, your body language can betray that maybe you are vulnerable, or you are uncertain, or you are a little bit defensive or closed off. So then on the right-hand side of this slide, we can see some of those very obvious high power poses. So standing with a wide leg stance, having your arms in a big raised victory signal above your head. You might see politicians doing this after they've won an election. Standing with your hands on your hips. I mean, I think for me, that's like, you can think of your mother giving out to you when you were a kid, maybe. And then the arms crossed behind the head one is a classic sort of, 1980s executive at their desk with their feet up on the desks and the arm behind the head kind of thing is one with that. So then you see on the other side, your sort of lower power positions. And these are ones that can show that you're a little bit defensive or not feeling confident or closed off. So kind of that hunching, sitting with your arms crossed, all of those things show that you are maybe not approachable or else not confident, depending on the position. And certainly a lot of the things that I've spoken up in the Speak Up Club, in particular when we're talking about women, is that, especially when you look at something like the size 0 narrative, where women are encouraged to be really, really thin, and size 0 is US sizing, which would be the equivalent of about 4 in our sizing here, which is very, very unhealthily small unless you're a tiny petite person naturally. So women are naturally kind of ingrained that we should be smaller and thinner. And you see in this image here that women kind of, take up a small amount of space a lot of the time as well. Whereas the thing that people complain about on the tube in London is manspreading, where men always sit with their legs wide open. They're taking up more space naturally. They're showing more dominance naturally. So it is more natural for men to use their body in a more dominant and open way, and women a little bit more, you know, we would be encouraged more to sit in a sort of demure crossed ankle pose, sit with their knees together, be smaller in life. So a lot of the work I do at the Speak Up Club is to encourage women to spread out, take up their space, own the space they're in the room as well. But often a lot of men won't necessarily show their confidence or their authority as well if they're unconfident in a situation. So it's not exclusive to women, but it is culturally a little bit more ingrained in women. One of great influences on me is this incredible trainer called Cara Alter, and she wrote a book called The Credibility Code. And one of the things she said in it is, if you'd like people to describe you as having a strong spine and a level head, you literally have to. And this is so telling, because a lot of the language that we use in everyday idioms that talk about how people are, how people come across, is all based on how they hold their body in a lot of ways. So one of the key things around public speaking in particular is that really a lot of how you can improve your presentation in it is by using your body. And a lot of the messages we leak in meetings and everyday interactions on dates, everything like that, is from how we use our body, and we don't even realize we're doing it. It's so subconscious. If we look at this person on the right here, on the first picture, they're a little bit hunched and slumped, and in the second, they have a really good posture. So all these words that I've listed here that are really negative connotations, some of them, are all based on bad posture and just the way you're holding your body. So shifty, a slouch, crooked, spineless, they're all horrible words to be described as, whereas balanced, grounded, level-headed, head straight in her shoulders, having gravitas, those are all very positive. Firm backbone, standing your ground. And a lot of actually how we come across starts, and I do in workshops, we do a full body kind of scan, and you would be very surprised in how much of your presence actually can start with your feet, your grounding into the floor, your gravity. The word gravitas indeed comes from the same root in Latin as gravity. So how we plant our feet into the ground, hold ourselves, and actually how our legs are, as you'll see later, is very impactful and very telling. And there's a wonderful visualization involving that, which I can't wait to do again when I get to do real life workshops, because it's so powerful. We learned it in London at RADA, and it's incredible. And it really shows you how just small changes in even how you have hold your knees makes such a difference. So really, even from your feet upwards, which you mightn't think are part of how you come across to other people or something that has an effect on how you are, is hugely impactful. But I'm going to start at the head now. And I think this is one of my favorite examples of how people hold their heads is Princess Diana, because she was known for this kind of interview she did where she was talking about her marriage and how there were 3 people in the marriage, and that famous quote. And she was really possibly playing or just naturally talking about how she felt sort of vulnerable and victimized. And so she famously had her head tilted and looking up. And that's a very kind of, oh, poor me sort of way of holding your head. So whether she was trained to do that or whether it came naturally, there are pictures of her as a child with her head in the same position. So I think it's maybe her natural kind of demure, innocent pose. But lowering your head really shows vulnerability, and looking up is very sort of, you know, it makes your eyes look bigger. It's more childlike. So the position of your head is so important. So if you're speaking to people and your head is kind of low, your eyes will naturally look at the ground. You come across as more uncertain. Whereas if you're looking them straight in the eyes, your head is level, you come across, as we talked about, as being level-headed. And then the reverse of that is if your head chin is a little bit too high up, you come across as maybe condescending or looking down on other people. So in terms of being aware of your own body, I'd really recommend just trying to practice getting that chin right. And I know on Zoom calls, a lot of people, depending on how their camera is angled, can come across like they're looking down into the camera. So it's something to watch out for. Another really interesting thing is a way that people can really leak power in a meeting. And it's by how you're holding your head. And I worked with one client on private coaching that this made a huge difference for, once we clocked what the problem was. And it's that when you're in a meeting, you're naturally kind of listening to what other people are saying. And I often put my head to the side when I'm listening. It's just a natural kind of reaction. And I'd call it the listening pose. But if you are taking on the mantle of speaking, then you need to start posing for the job you're doing, which is holding the room. And that's when you need to level your head up. And a lot of people won't remember to level their head up in a meeting. And so they're listening, they're listening, they're listening. And then it comes to their turn to say something. And nobody really listens to them, and they can't figure out why. And it's because they're not putting their power head on. So that's a really small thing you can do that can really change your impact in a meeting. So what is a good thing to do as well is to use that head like a tripod, like your neck is like a tripod. So like an eagle or like an owl, you turn your head to speak to people, but you keep your body quite firm. And that shows that you're very grounded, very balanced, and you have a firm backbone, as opposed to constantly turning your whole body towards people, depending on the physical situation and context, of course. But it's always good to point your nose at who you're talking to and not give them the side eye situation. So, you know, always turn your head to the person you're talking to, but don't necessarily turn your whole body, because that can actually give your power away to them a little bit more. Whereas if you hold yourself in your own space, you're containing your own space a little bit more. So one thing people love when we talk about body language is the lying eyes thing, and how you can tell if someone is lying. So first thing is, there's not really hard and fast rules that you can super stick to, because a lot of people are interested in this topic. And because of that, a lot of people think they can use this information for evil, not for good, and then trick people with it if they are clued into it. So what I would always say is, if you are trying to read someone in this way, the best thing to do is look for deviations from the norm. So if someone's usually very shy and always talks to you looking at the floor or looking out the window or looking anywhere but at your face, and then all of a sudden they're looking you straight in the eye and talking to you directly, making a big effort to do it, and that's really unusual for them. It's like, why are they doing that? Have they read that looking at someone directly and being very clear about how they talk to them shows they're being truthful, and maybe they're using that information? So if someone's being unusual, I think that's a good place to start. The other thing is eyes darting around the room. People say that that is a sign of maybe being a little bit untruthful. Now, I struggle with this on Zoom calls, because I'm very conscious of, when you're looking at the camera, you're looking at your slides, you're looking at the other people on the Zoom call. It's very hard on Zoom to actually keep your eyes focused in one place, or kind of your gaze in one place the way you would in normal conversation. So the rules are a little bit different now that we're all kind of living together on Zoom. But generally, if someone is kind of shifty-eyed when you're in conversation with them, kind of, it means that they're kind of looking for an escape. Now, they might be looking for an escape because you're boring the hell out of them. They might be looking for an escape because they've just got somewhere to be, or they might be looking for an escape because they're feeling a little bit uncomfortable because they're not being entirely truthful or entirely comfortable in the conversation. Another thing is eyes down and rubbing their neck, kind of like, you know, releasing a bit of tension in their neck as they're talking. That can show a sign of stress and kind of trying to avoid the conversation like this. That can be stress, it can be discomfort. I think that's something that might come up in relationship issues a lot. But it can be something to look out for as well. That can just show you someone isn't entirely comfortable in the conversation, and that could be for so many different reasons. Another thing that has been studied is blink rate, and this is so interesting. So when we're very relaxed, our blink rate is something like 8 to 10 blinks a minute, I think. And then as our brain gets more active and stressed out, we blink an awful lot more. So if someone is trying to mentally process what the truth is, what they're trying to tell you, how to spin this lie, how they're going to back it up later, their brain is in overdrive and they might be blinking a lot more. So that's another one that you can look out for if you are interested in seeing if people are being completely straight with you. But also, again, just check back to the first point that you have to kind of think about how they are normally. And maybe there's someone who wears contact lenses and has really dry eyes and they're constantly blinking anyway. So just look out for those little deviations from the norm. Another thing I just love, and I thought this is a little funny one to pop in, is the power gaze. And this is basically how to kind of stop someone in their tracks. And I think people must think I'm a great listener sometimes, because I think I sometimes tend to let people just kind of ramble on a bit at me. I'm like, how do I stop them, but politely? And then this is maybe not so polite, but it does stop people in their tracks. So it's really good for changing the atmosphere to a little bit more serious, stopping someone who's rambling on at you, maybe slightly intimidating them if you kind of want to show your authority and you feel like you need to have a little more formality to the situation. Definitely don't do this in a friendly situation. Don't do it on a date. Don't do it with someone you want to make the atmosphere more informal with. This is a serious power move, and it's imagining a third eye right in the center of their forehead, and you kind of fix your gaze there and don't let it drop below their eye level. And it really changes the atmosphere. So normally when we're having a friendly kind of interaction, this triangle kind of here is where our gaze rests. We don't sort of look up high or right in their eyes. We kind of look around there. Then if it's a sort of more romantic situation, our gaze tends to go from here down, and I'll let you think about why yourself. But so going upwards is really upping the formality levels there. The next body language thing, I suppose, for a lot of us in a work situation is how we sit. And we've done a whole actual webinar on Are You Sitting Powerfully? So I think that's probably up on the YouTube channel already at this stage. And if anyone wants to go back and go in depth into that topic, you can watch that on Iconic's YouTube channel. So it's called Are You Sitting Powerfully? And I suppose the main thing to remember with sitting is that a lot of office chairs aren't the greatest for our posture. So in a meeting situation, it is really good to be not sinking back too far into a chair that's too big for you. If it means sitting on the edge of the seat, being comfortable is not necessarily the same as looking comfortable. And I repeat this ad nauseum to clients and people I'm training, because I'm at my most comfortable lying on a couch with my feet up, wrapped in a blanket, but that's not a great look for work purposes. So just remember that sometimes you have to be, you know, holding that stomach in, holding those shoulders back, putting on your good posture that actually, you know, this is a bit more comfortable, but this is a bit more professional. And I think I actually was sitting back there in a very comfortable position. So I'll be a bit more professional now, but maybe you have to sit on the edge of your chair. Maybe you need a box under your feet for a Zoom call to get you into the right position, or a booster cushion, whatever it is. Make sure that you are sitting powerfully rather than too comfortably, but definitely not uncomfortably, because I think that was just going to make you tense. But try and adjust your chairs, use cushions, do what you can to make sure that you've got a powerful position, and it'll make such a difference to your energy at the end of the day if you hold your body ergonomically, kindly to your back, to your neck, you know, all of these things. And I do highly recommend you go back and watch that webinar if you want to see a little bit more about how to sit at your desk better in a way that'll leave you more energized after your day's work as well. So moving down the body, let's go down to the legs, because a lot of us are super interested in the eyes and facial expressions, how we can tell from, you know, what we're always focused on every day. Now, we're not getting to see much of people's legs at the moment on Zoom, but when you do get into public, or, you know, even with your family, just look at how the dynamics in a group work. It's really interesting. Legs are so honest because legs don't expect any attention to be on them. We always expect our attention to be on our faces. So our legs will just do what they want. And if you watch a group, you can really tell a lot about the dynamics in the group. People standing at a cocktail party or in a bar or whatever, how their legs are can tell you a lot about who's interested in who'd rather be somewhere else, who wants to talk to who. So looking down can tell you a lot of secret information. If you're giving a talk or something in public, how you plant your feet on the ground, I would always say a little bit apart, just below hip distance, just under hip distance apart. probably for women, and I think men naturally can adopt a little bit of a wider stance. But open legs kind of portrays a dominance, attitude, openness, confidence. Always plant your feet a little bit apart when you're speaking in public, because you come across as more balanced. Even if someone is opposing you, it's mentally harder to knock you off your balance. And literally as well, I mean, if someone rushed at you, rushed the stage, but it is, you know, the literal and the figurative are kind of one and the same. You know, all the words that we use are kind of based in the physical reality, and it comes across. So having your feet planted a little bit apart gives you a firmness, a balance, and a sense of gravity and gravitas. Whereas if you hold your feet just together when you're speaking in public, or, you know, even in a work situation or whatever it is, that is a sort of subordinate kind of attitude. Actually, I think this might be on the next slide. Yeah, I'm going to go back to this. So I'll just talk about the open. This can be sitting as well. Open is a more dominant attitude. Then crossed legs obviously is more kind of uncertain. And so I find it more comfortable to cross my legs, but I would definitely make a point of trying not to in certain situations. And you'll notice then, you know, locked ankles is another one that has had a lot of studies and kind of evidence on it, that it's a withholding kind of posture. So a lot of people have seen that people in court will sit with their ankles locked, pushed back under their chair. There has been some airlines that have trained their staff to see if people are sitting with their ankles locked and they ask them, do they want a drink or do they want some help or are they okay? They've noticed that nervous travelers will have their ankles locked and say, no, 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 I'm fine. And that the airline staff should always ask again because they probably aren't fine. And that's how they know. And then also we've already talked about how your feet will point to where you want to go. So if you look at a group sitting down, maybe around a coffee table or something like that, you'll see if someone's feet are pointing to the door, they'd maybe rather be somewhere else. If they're crossing a leg towards the door, if they're crossing a leg towards someone else, you can see a lot from that. Then going back to the standing, so parallel stance, which I was about to get into there, when your feet are just beside each other, is kind of a subordinate stance. And if you think about it, that might be how someone in the army would stand when they're talking to their commanding officer. And it would be a good way to stand if you are getting given out to by your boss, because it's very kind of respectful. But not a great way to stand if you are taking the floor to speak. So then you should have your legs apart, be more balanced. The foot forward thing is kind of interesting. I think a lot of us might naturally go into that pose if someone's taking our photo, and it is a pose as such. So the interesting kind of psychology behind that is, I suppose it would have come from 19th century portraits, when you see a lot of people, when the men used to wear tights and kind of bloomers, they would stand with a leg forward, kind of showing their thigh. And that is a kind of a, look at me, look at my lovely tights kind of pose. So it is a good way to stand to maybe show interest in someone, is to put a foot forward or put a foot towards them when they're talking to you, that it shows that you're interested in what they're saying and you're engaged in the conversation. And then a standing cross, where you cross your legs standing, is quite a closed off position. So it's a very good one to train yourself out of if you're speaking or standing up to speak. Don't do it, because it does instantly put you on the back foot, as it were. It makes you seem a little bit uncertain, like you don't really know your subject matter very well, like you're a little bit nervous. So even if you know your subject matter inside out, you'll come across better if you just stand with your feet planted a little bit apart, and you can shift your weight around a little bit once you're more comfortable, or move around the stage. But if someone has their legs crossed over standing up, it does look very nervous. It kind of makes you look like you need to go to the loo as well. So with all that, I would say just I think is very important that when you are kind of preparing any public speaking, that preparing yourself is really as important as preparing your content. Obviously know your content, get your slides ready, all of that, but do put a little bit of thought into how your body language is going to come across to other people. And even if you only do this yourself at home, I would say that we all have a mobile phone. It's so easy to record yourself. You might shock yourself with what you see, especially if you record full length, maybe standing up and doing a little talk or something for a couple of minutes. And you move through stages then. If you do record yourself, the first stage before you record yourself and see what you are leaking through your body is, we call it unconsciously incompetent. So it means you aren't conscious of it. You don't know, and you don't know what you're doing wrong. Then consciously incompetent is when you look at your video of yourself, you can see what body language signals you're giving out. So you know what you're doing wrong. Then consciously competent is that the stage where you are actively trying to do better and you are consciously thinking about it and doing the right things. And if you do that enough, you get to the stage where it just goes into your muscle memory and you've trained yourself or been trained by someone like me and you become unconsciously competent, which means that you don't even have to think about it. And you have just in your muscle memory and your own memory kind of just nailed all this stuff, weeded out the bad things and got yourself into a way of being and acting that is not letting off any bad signals and giving the right ones when you know you need to. So if anyone is interested in doing more, I have a little action plan for you, and I'm going to send these slides around afterwards so you can look at this checklist. And I just say, record yourself if you have any doubts. And even if you don't have any doubts, you could be surprised after you watch a video of yourself. Examine how you come across. Look at, do you want to be more authoritative? Do you want to be more approachable? Can you possibly use little tools to make yourself one way or the other, depending on the circumstances? There's sometimes when you need to lead a team. There are sometimes when you want to be empathetic. We all have to shift between these varying modes all the time. So using our body language is how we can do that. And we do it naturally anyway, but there's always a little room for refinement. So you can weed out any derailing behaviors that are nervous tics, just a habit of crossing your legs or crossing your arms that you automatically move into that you can stop doing or start doing depending on the situation, practicing that a little bit. And then I'd always encourage anyone to create a speaking opportunity for themselves, create a talk you have to give, a webinar you could give for your company, even just doing your Instagram live, something like that. Make yourself, put yourself out there a little bit more and practice this stuff. Or even start, if you don't want to do it in public, start a fake Instagram account and put it to private and just make Instagram lives to practice. And then, you know, you can save them on a highlight to check back on them to see your progress. Something like that is very handy. And finally, thank you all for attending today and listening. And these are all my contact details if anybody wants to get in touch or has any questions or wants to follow me on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook. The Speak Up Club contacts are there.